This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Welcome to episode 448 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host, Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund keeping the pressure on Bayern in the title race with a 5-2 win against the inferior Borussia, and we will preview Sunday's match away to FC Augsburg. For all that and more, joins me Matthias Zug. Hello Matthias, how are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. I'm doing quite well. Springtime has finally properly arrived in the Rocky Mountains, and I'm no longer worried about too much snow. And so things are looking up. How are you?
I'm in a state of utter despair because my 76ers have lost Game 7 against the Celtics, and I have to honestly say this was probably the worst loss I've experienced as a sports fan in general. I don't think Borussia Dortmund have ever given me this much pain in any loss. You know, obviously losing the Champions League final and such, you know, very bitter losses. But I've never had a loss where you lose due to your star players just completely no-showing. So that was something new to me, and I feel like this is something a bit more Spursy or Schalke thing to do, like this kind of choke drop. I'm not used to from Dortmund, so last Sunday I was really distraught. But luckily for me, Borussia Dortmund did not lay an egg to add to that, make it a loser omelette for me. So, Matthias, I have to say that was a very enjoyable game against Gladbach because when it was half time, we could already, think about the next game and maybe who to rest. I think Terzic took, was it Hummels and Riasson off at some point, I think 60 minutes or so, due to them being on a fourth yellow right now, so to avoid suspension. So really easy going, but of course, that all being said, Dortmund once again playing really well. Who and what stood out for you?
Well, I mean, Sebastian Haller, I would say that's probably his best match as a Dortmund player so far, which I know isn't saying much because he missed half of the season and so on, and he's still coming back to form. But this really answered some of the calls that we had, even in the last episode, and just in general in terms of his productivity and scoring more goals. You know, he scored a very striker-poacher goal, and then a really nice kind of back heel through the legs redirected goal. And that's the kind of stuff you need him to do. Not necessarily, I mean, yes, build up and all that stuff is very, very important, but also just finish those chances. So that was really good for Dortmund in general. And then obviously for him in particular. But that's really, my huge standout was Sebastian Haller doing really, really well. Donny Malen once again
let's talk
owning
about
people.
that before we move over to Malen, because first of all, I think he was involved in the first 4 goals, if I'm not mistaken, right? He had an assist for the first one, and what stood out to me for the first is that he took on a defender 1v1 and just walked past him, and then because Malen sort of had 2 defenders on him, I fail to remember who it was who made sort of a last-ditch effort to tackle the shot and blocking it. I think it might have been Benzebaini, so that Malen then could just run through and head it in. But the fact that Haller now has the physicality or the physical ability to sprint at that pace at a defender and have the technique to just walk past him and almost create a wide open shot for himself. Obviously the shot was blocked in the end, but it did look fairly open, and I think if he had aimed for the other corner of the goal, it would have been on target without the block. So I just wanted to just talk about that. To me was a highlight just because we have not really seen such a dynamic action from Haller where he really just created a shot and a scoring opportunity for himself, which obviously ultimately yielded in the goal because Daniel Malen, with his striker instincts right now, did push it over the line. So to me, that is obviously noteworthy, and I mean the poacher, the penalty also, where Jude Bellingham, I would say, was a little bit lucky that it went in underneath Olszewski or whatever the goalkeeper's name is. It was also a great motion where he received the ball and had this turnaround and all in very quick fashion. So that the fact that he was bundled over, I forgot by who it was, created obviously the 2-0 very early on. And if we talk about the combination for the third goal between Malen and Julian Brandt, of course, and then you have this beautiful back heel goal. I don't know about you, Matthias, but Gladbach obviously have been in shambles, quite honestly, but to me, Dortmund are reaching a level right now where they are pretty much unplayable.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's over the last few weeks, we've really seen Dortmund kick it up another gear, a notch, and play to the level that obviously all Dortmund fans really want them to play. I mean, I've always talked about in the past, geez, what do you expect to blow teams away 4, 5, 6 goals all the time? Well, right now they kind of are. And that's awesome to see. It's great to see. Obviously, you're not able to do that all the time. But now where we're really in crunch time, and obviously since that disappointing match against Bochum, it's really, we're seeing Dortmund play at a level that's fantastic to see. And Gladbach, conversely, they've kind of been so up and down this season. I had expected more. I had mentioned, this wasn't really a match I was too worried about because they had nothing to play for. If you look at who's left on the schedule, this is really the team with nothing left. And they played like a team that had nothing left to play for. Yeah, occasionally they tried to press Dortmund high, but Dortmund played around that press so easily and effortlessly. And then it was just open. They could just walk right through Gladbach and did it again and again and again. And much like Wolfsburg the week prior, I think Gladbach could probably be happy that they only conceded 5 goals. Dortmund were effortless. Yeah, at the end you could say, when that penalty happened, which, of course we'll talk about, that Dortmund were a little bit too chill for a while there. But quickly regained their focus and kind of shut the door right there at the end with Gio Reyna, the man for the late goals. And so, yeah, overall, really, really good performance. It was interesting during the match. The commentator mentioned that the last time Gladbach won in Dortmund was 10 years ago. And then I remembered, oh, yeah, that was the match that I attended. So, that was a great little reminder there. That was still under Jürgen Klopp. So, yay, memories. But this time, obviously, Dortmund, there was no doubt who was the significantly better Borussia. And
the Jinx had left the building a decade ago.
Yes, for sure.
Sorry. It's just very funny to me.
But that's basically it. I mean, Dortmund deserved win, dominant win. I don't really have much more to add to that because it was just so overwhelming for the majority of the game. I will say for Gladbach, it was great to see Lars Stindl score a goal. He's going to be going back to the club where he started, Karlsruhe in the second tier, which is kind of a cool little heartwarming story. And with that goal, he actually equaled Günther Netzer for goals at Gladbach. And I always feel like Stindl is one of those highly underappreciated Bundesliga professionals. So for him, on a personal level, that was really great to see.
It was also a really nice goal. He...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, when someone scores a goal that has a super low XG, it tends to mean it was a screamer, and it definitely was that.
Yeah, I mean, Niklas Süle can probably do better. He can probably switch over to Stindl, half a second sooner than he did. Then he has probably a better chance to block that shot. But yeah, I think Dortmund can be a bit lucky that toward the and Gladbach didn't make it 4-3 because they certainly had a chance after that. But yeah, I feel like that was sort of kicked off by this nonsensical penalty, which to my surprise was the first penalty that Dortmund conceded all season. And yeah, I don't think the referee had this one right, and I'm very glad it wasn't a talking point at all, because if it had been, I'd be freaking mad after, the Adeyemi non-call to call this on Gio Reyna. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, what makes me really happy is just that Dortmund's utter dominance in the second half of the season. And I feel like Daniel Malen and Sebastian Aller and also Karim Adeyemi and their ascension in the second half of the season really speaks to that. I mean, if we look at the Hinrundentabelle versus the Rückrundentabelle, Dortmund finished the first half of the season with 31 points and had scored 31 goals, and they conceded 25. That's in 17 games. Meanwhile, now after 15, Dortmund lead obviously the league. They have 36 points, Bayern have 32, and Dortmund have scored 47 and only conceded 17. So Bayern have scored 38 and conceded 19. So our goal difference is plus 30 in the second half of the season, and Bayern's is plus 19. So in that regard, had Dortmund played, at the same level they're doing now in the first half of the season, I think without a doubt we'd be already champions now, because this level of form is just amazing. And I personally am just really super happy that Daniel Malen in the second half of this year or season or whatever you want to call it has found some much needed form. Because unlike with Karim Adeyemi, who of course joined Dortmund from the Austrian Bundesliga, it is his second year, and with this price tag and the expectation, because Daniel Malen didn't come here as a super young teenager. I mean, he isn't old exactly either, but if you're already in your 20s, I think at Dortmund, the expectations are a little bit different, since he's now, 24 or so, than when you arrive here as like a 17, 18, 19-year-old. So the fact that he has found his groove, that this team altogether has found its groove, to me is amazing. And yeah, Daniel Malen is probably one of the best players in the Bundesliga right now. I mean, he has now scored 9 goals, assisted 6, and I'm pretty sure most of them have come in the second half of the season. And I don't know, maybe a couple more hat tricks and he can compete for the Torjägerkanone, because with Robert Lewandowski no longer in the Bundesliga, I think Niklas Füllkrug is leading those rankings right now with 16. And if we look at Sebastian Aller, I think it's also important. I think he's now on 7 goals. And if you sort of extrapolate his current form, I think he is a plus 20 goal scorer, and he will also always be in the range of 6 to 8, maybe even 10 assists in the season, considering his ceiling. I'm already looking forward to the next season and seeing how this pans out, and really hope they can all stay injury free and conserve this form into the next tenure. But to me, this is of course a very positive development, which especially in Malen's case I didn't quite see coming, because he was slumping a lot. He didn't really get back on defense, and there were just so many negatives about him that this turnaround to me is very amazing. And with Karim Adeyemi, I think he needed a little bit more time, but actually if you compare him to Malen's development at Dortmund, he's actually taken far less time to come good. Obviously the switch to left side has really opened things up for him, and he has now understood in a way better sense how to utilize his speed and just dust defenders left, right, and center. And yeah, we are creating mismatches on both wings right now, and this is obviously something you always dream of, and often sometimes you also want to create with the assistance of your fullbacks. But with Adeyemi and Malen alone, I feel like Dortmund are doing this. They don't even need Guerrero, Wolf, Riasson, or whoever to create these mismatches. But obviously, having these fullbacks, obviously that does help on the offensive end as well, which in Riasson's case actually is a little surprising to me, but I certainly welcome it. He had a very good game against Wolfsburg as well. So yeah, Matthias, I don't know about you, but I'm just very positive about this team. But the problem is we're very positive at the back of 2 home games. Meanwhile, if we look at Dortmund's road form, things are not looking quite as dandy. So considering that FC Augsburg has rarely been a happy hunting ground for Dortmund, unless it's us introducing a new striker, because I think Aubameyang and did Aubameyang score 4 in his debut away to Augsburg, or was it 3?
I don't even remember.
I know
obviously,
that Haaland
you
scored
know,
3.
Haaland, yeah, everyone remembers that one coming off the bench. So, yeah, and Augsburg, they've always been a difficult side for some reason for Dortmund, just the way they play. And the problem that Dortmund faces, Augsburg have played themselves into a relegation fight. And so, I mean, they're 4 points clear of the playoff spot, so odds are they're going to be fine. But I mean, they're also slumping, so it's they have something to play for, but they had that against Bochum, a direct rival when it comes to relegation, and they lost and they laid an egg. And so. Yeah, I mean, this could go either way. Now, either they're super focused, but Dortmund are super focused too. So as long as Dortmund maintain that focus and play with the edge and remember Bochum and remember, Stuttgart to a degree and go, you know what, we're just not going to have that happen. And Stuttgart a little bit less so because Stuttgart really opened up for most of the game. I don't expect Augsburg to come at Dortmund. So I see it maybe a little bit more like the match against Bochum, and just keeping that reminder in the back of their head and focus when it comes to finishing and how they approach this match. It's going to be tricky. It's not going to be pretty, but I do believe ultimately Dortmund will win this one in Augsburg just because they're in such a high form. They're very focused. They're not mentally off their game at all. Augsburg are a little backpedaling right now simply because they weren't expecting. If you go back 2 weeks, I said, Augsburg have nothing to play for. And pretty much everybody agrees with that. And then they started playing like crap. And I mean, no offense to Augsburg. It's a lovely city. It's a club I wouldn't miss in the Bundesliga, to be perfectly honest. If I could swap them for Stuttgart, I would. But I would enjoy Borussia Dortmund turning up to Augsburg, winning, and making Augsburg very, very nervous on the last match day.
Well, here's the good news. I think Dortmund's performance away to Bochum was pretty good. They didn't win because they couldn't score their chances and the referees are incompetent, but at least form-wise, I think Dortmund were okay in that game, and if they play a similar match and have a bit more efficiency up front, I do think that Dortmund will win this game. So I should be scared, but for whatever reason, I'm not really. But there is a talking point I have here, and I wanted to discuss that with you because I've not quite calculated the arithmetics of the next match day. However, back in the day, as in two seasons ago, I think, because I think the switch came for the last season, the penultimate match day is no longer a 3:30 Saturday kickoff for everybody, because now it's like any other Bundesliga match day. We have Freiburg playing Wolfsburg on Friday, and that of course will determine whether RB Leipzig have already ensured a spot in the Champions League or not, because if they do, their incentive against Bayern is entirely different than if they have to play for something. So we on Friday have already root for Freiburg and hope that they beat VfL Wolfsburg, so they keep their chances alive for a Champions League spot and put pressure on Leipzig to get a result in Munich. That is already very important. And then of course Augsburg will also already kind of know whether they are more under pressure or not, because as you said, right now they are 4 points above the drop zone. And if Schalke lose to Frankfurt and I don't know. Obviously, Hertha play Bochum directly, but if Stuttgart don't win in Mainz, I think they have a pretty...
And Hoffenheim. Don't forget Hoffenheim against Union Berlin.
Yeah.
Another big one.
Exactly. So these games all happen before Augsburg and Dortmund play, I think. Because the final match of that match day is Leverkusen against Gladbach, which of course is also a nice matchup. Probably better for Leverkusen right now, who are also in the hunt for a European spot. So, yeah, what do you make of the fact that, and of course, should mention it, that theoretically Bayern can also claim the championship, and should they win it, maybe it's nicer if they win it this way by not actually playing, because if Bayern win and Dortmund lose in Augsburg, then I think the title is also already decided. So, last season, I don't think too many people complained, but with this season, things being that close, I feel like the reason why the Bundesliga had it set up for decades like this becomes very apparent to me.
Well, there's a wonderful German word called Wettbewerbsverzerrung. It basically means you are altering the outcome of a competition because of what you do or don't know. And we can't forget that if we go back 50 years, the Bundesliga was embroiled in a betting scandal, basically point shaving, if you want to call it for anything else, but a betting scandal that really rocked the league to its foundation and changed a lot of things. And so, in my opinion, the last two match days the matches need to happen at the exact same time for exactly the reasons you said. Because if Freiburg lose to Wolfsburg, then it's done. Leipzig are guaranteed to be in the Champions League, whether they're third or fourth. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how that alters things as far as the Champions League draw is concerned next season, but that's secondary, really. Its primary is to get in.
I don't think the players care too much.
No, I don't think they care. So that basically means, okay, all pressure's off. Leipzig have nothing left to play for the rest of the season in a club that nobody really cares about. So that's the big one right there. Obviously, the Wolfsburg match has implication. Also, the very first match of the match day has implications for the very last one, because if Wolfsburg lose, Leverkusen can leapfrog them into the sixth place with a win. So that changes things like right there. If Wolfsburg, I guess theoretically Frankfurt could still catch them, but I don't think so, just because of goal difference. And like you said, all the Saturday matchups that have implications for relegation are huge, because then Stuttgart plays on Sunday looking at it. Mainz more or less are out of any European contention, which I think is a good thing for Dortmund if we look ahead to the last match day, because I just don't think they'll really care that too terribly much. So I would prefer it to all be at the same time, to make sure nobody can throw out those terms like Wettbewerbsverzerrung, that you didn't really try anymore, and make those kind of accusations. Plus, the title hasn't really been tight for a long time, but relegation has, European places have. There are still things that matter, and so you add tension if you have everybody play at the same time, and you have that little bit of scoreboard watching. I mean, I remember as a kid, going back 30 years when Stuttgart won the title, and it was between Stuttgart, Frankfurt, and Dortmund, and everybody playing at the same time, and you still had those images of people like with their ears on radios, on those little portable transistor radios, kind of like listening, what's the score, and in a different stadium and things like that. That's honestly, it's completely lost in that sense, because everything's already determined before. Now, obviously on the last match day, we'll have that, but who knows, by the last match day, it may be that nobody has anything to play for anymore, and we're all just kind of moving on.
Yeah, I think the reason for it being this way is so the Bundesliga can sell individual games to the TV stations, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but if I had to guess, this would be my best guess. And it's very annoying. Also, we are all Kinder of the Bundesliga Conference, the children of the conference. That made zero sense. So basically, the Bundesliga Conference, for people who don't know, is like a simulcast, or whip around, or whatever you want to call it, where you switch between the games and wherever a goal is scored. You know, the TV or radio feed, because there's also radio conference, will go to that game, and these 90 minutes are drama packed, obviously, and something I absolutely would love to watch on ESPN. And I'm a little sad that this is not on offer here, because watching the conference on such a high stakes match day is always super fun, and creates awesome memories, and just very dramatic and roller coaster, and all these things. Second best thing to being in the stadium, I would say. But obviously we're deprived of that right now. And with this sort of matchup or match day scheduling, we are deprived of it anyway, which is a little bit sad. But just wanted to highlight that Freiburg absolutely need to win, because even if they draw and Bayern theoretically win, Leipzig would already have it, because they would then be level on points, but the goal difference is just too crass, because Leipzig, I think, plus 18 and SC Freiburg are plus 6. So I don't think there's such a big goal swing within these two match days that Freiburg could overcome it. So they really, Freiburg in this case, have to beat Wolfsburg. Now, if Wolfsburg play the way they played in Dortmund, I'm fairly certain Freiburg will win this. But I have a hunch that Wolfsburg will be a bit more professional this time around, and might clinch themselves a European spot. And I have to say, I really want to barf if I see clubs like Wolfsburg and Leverkusen, and then also Leipzig clock up the European spots again, where these clubs have almost zero to no following, and maybe on sporting merit they deserve it, but not on financial and 50+1 rule spirit merit. So it's very annoying, but the good news, I think, going into this Augsburg game, obviously Dortmund are just training right now, and there can be injuries, but for now they don't really have any key injuries going into this game, don't have any worries. So Dortmund can field their strongest 11. There were some question marks behind Jude Bellingham, because he, of course, is nursing a knee injury through the season, but I think he'll be fine, in quotation marks, going into Sunday's game. I think this extra day also helps Dortmund out. And I'm really intrigued to see what Leipzig can do against Bayern, because that will probably determine the championship for us. Don't you think? I mean, we talked about it in the pre-pod. I also think that Cologne can be a dangerous team for Bayern. They have already taken points off them this year. But nevertheless, I really do think that on paper, Leipzig are, of course, Dortmund's best chance to win the championship. So let's talk about that game real quick. Do you honestly think that Leipzig can go to the Allianz Arena and come away with something? Do you think that Nkunku can? I think Jan Sommer is out, so it might be against Ulreich and Upamecano get the better of them, or do you think that Bayern will just completely destroy them and annihilate Leipzig like they probably will with Schalke as well?
Well, I think my hope is that both Marco Rose and Thomas Tuchel help Borussia Dortmund win the title. That would just be kind of cool. But, well, yeah, I mean, on paper, Leipzig definitely have a very good chance of going to Munich and turning up and getting a result, whether that's a point or 3. Either one, I'll be okay with. And, you know, obviously Leipzig would be okay with in that sense. Bayern have brought in a little more focus here. But recently, or let's say against Schalke, but Schalke are just not a good side. So it's a tough one on paper. This is the hopeful match. Köln next week, like we talked about pre-pod. Steffen Baumgart would be up for it. And then it'll be down to how a manager can project that to his players. I think, Jonas Hector, who is retiring after the season, has been a great servant to the club and the league. He'll obviously not want to be embarrassed in his last home match as a Kölner. So, and maybe they'll play for Steffen Baumgart, they'll play for Jonas Hector, and that can already be a driving force, because obviously in the league they have nothing to play for. They're not being relegated, they're not going to Europe, so there's pride at stake, but maybe that is the pride they need for coach and for their captain, Jonas Hector. So in that sense, I think there's a chance there, and obviously Köln fans will turn up. And if there's a chance that they could be the key decider in the Bundesliga title race, and hurt Bayern in the process, then yeah, I think there you have the atmosphere that could do it. But again, on paper, the best chance for Dortmund to gain a bit of an advantage is on Saturday evening, the late kickoff, when Leipzig take on Bayern, and Leipzig are a good side. If they play like they're capable of playing, I absolutely believe they can get a result. If they show up like they have occasionally this season, where it's kind of been like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, no, then Bayern are going to score 3 or 4 against them. But oh God, it's going to feel so bad in my soul to root for Leipzig. But, right now, the ends justify the means. So, yeah, everyone's going to be watching and rooting for Marco Rose on Saturday evening.
It's really hard to stomach, because the idea of Leipzig getting Champions League football is very annoying, which is why the very late win against Werder Bremen annoyed the heck out of me. I didn't even see it. I was watching this game until Bremen took the lead, and then I had to take off or whatever. But yeah, just very annoying, because that really increased Leipzig's chances to play Champions League football, and I don't really think they deserve it, if I'm really honest. So very annoyed with that, very annoyed. But more importantly, it is maybe the one upside of this schedule is that you and I can watch this game by itself on Saturday. So at least we've got that going for us, which is potentially nice. We will see. But maybe it'll be agonizing. And I do wonder if Bayern win, if this is going to diminish hopes in the hearts of the Dortmund players, or do you think that regardless of a Bayern win or not, that Dortmund will just pounce Augsburg? I'll be honest, we will never know anyway, but I'm just wondering about that.
I don't think it'll change their attitude, because again, there's still one more game. And they Dortmund, think about it, if Dortmund go, oh woe is me, Bayern won, and then they lay an egg against Augsburg for a draw, and then Bayern lose to Köln on the last match day. That's the scenario you don't want to play out, the what if. And so I think Dortmund are going to put absolutely everything out there, especially if you look at players like Alea, Bellingham, Hummels, Can. They are going to put absolutely everything out there for these last 2 matches, and that will infect everyone else around them to do the same thing. And so I'm not concerned about a mentality switch off in these last 2 matches. So that's why I am confident of Dortmund's results. But unfortunately, it's not up to Dortmund in that sense. They can win, 10-0 twice, and if Bayern win out, it doesn't matter. But I think Dortmund is going to give absolutely everything against Augsburg, not get frustrated, not get dejected, and just keep focused and keep hammering. And I think so that's why I'm confident they will win the last 2 matches. And then it's just down to how focused Bayern are as people who are perennial champions. And who also, I mean, here's the weird thing with Bayern. They have nothing left to play for aside from the title. I mean, that's like their minimum thing they need to get now to even maybe say this was an okay season. So, you know, pride is at stake for Bayern players there as well. And we know that they do have players that know how to dig deep. So it's going to be a fascinating match, and hopefully Leipzig can turn up and for once do something right in their miserable little lives.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel emotionally going into this, but I'll be honest, I've already done a little bit of title race grieving, if that makes sense, after the draw in Bochum. For whatever reason, I'm not 100% there as I usually would be. I don't know why. It's just this draw in Bochum took a lot out of me, because fumbling it like this is very painful. But maybe these last two games can get me back in there. Now, what I'm convinced is that the game in Augsburg will definitely not be easy. I don't think Dortmund will just be like up 4-0 at halftime. I'm fairly certain that it's going to be a much closer win. And yeah, that is, of course, something Dortmund will have to fight and battle for. And then, of course, in the final match day, I also do believe that Mainz will make things a little harder, little tougher for us than Gladbach and Wolfsburg did. So it's obviously not going to be as easygoing, but you know, Dortmund have fumbled it so often now on the road and not really shown the same mettle they did in the Westfalenstadion. So yeah, this is sort of the last time to prove that they have whatever it takes to have it, which they haven't proven so far on the road, which is endlessly frustrating. But yeah, until then, I don't think we have much more to preview. I mean, we can talk about Augsburg's team and whatnot, but half of them are injured anyway, and the other half I don't even know anymore. So, you know, Andre Hahn, I think, is out. He has given Dortmund terrible woes. Rafael Gikiewicz, who usually has his best games of the seasons against Dortmund, is out as well. So, and I think Kubek isn't quite on the same level as him. So that all being said, I don't know. This is a very average team that Dortmund absolutely must beat, no matter if they play on the road or at home. So I do believe strongly that Dortmund are going to come out victorious, even though their away form has been absolutely dire recently. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Matthias, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, back-to-back weeks of ex-Dortmund second team coaches the Dortmund are facing.
True.
So,
yeah, maybe we should talk about Bensebaini and how shit he was real quick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he scored the penalty that wasn't a penalty and that never should have been given and should have been reviewed. But he got absolutely owned by Daniel Mahlen and had a horrible match.
He played like a poor man's Guerrero, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
You know my opinions and thoughts on Bensebaini. I'm not a big fan. I think he is a defensive liability as well, and I don't think he has the attacking upside quite as high as Guerrero. So I personally would not want to have him as a left back. Maybe once again I will be wrong on that, but for now, I'm not really seeing anyone that can really upgrade the Guerrero slot whatsoever. So to me, this is sort of a head scratcher. But yeah, I also thought he just played poorly, and
and that can happen. You know, I mean, you come up against Mahlen, who, when he's in this type of form, he's one of the best players in the Bundesliga, and he has pace and balance and agility that most players don't have. But if you look at Dortmund left back situation, you know, you need someone who can stand up against the likes of Gnabry, Sané, Coman, people like that from Bayern next season. And so Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a question mark
Well,
there.
at
The
least
one
he has
thing
beaten Bayern a couple times.
that's true. That is true. That is true. The one thing about Ben Sabaini that I do like is that he is a significantly better physical presence than Guerrero. I mean, he's just a bigger guy, and he won't always be beaten on far post crosses like Guerrero is constantly. So, yeah, we'll see. And players play better when they're supporting cast, when they're, when everyone around them is better too. I mean, that's something we can't discount. I mean, I'll be honest, Julian Riasson, I didn't expect this from him.
True.
To be this good. I think if Dortmund get a left back.
But the thing about
set-
Riasson is that we did expect him to be at least defensively solid, which
That's
to
true.
me is sort
That's
of the
true.
main reason to get him, and every attacking output that he has is sort of a bonus. But with Bensebaini, I do not expect the same defensive solidity, discipline, and hustle, if I'm honest. So this is why I have this big question mark. I'd rather clone Riasson than have Bensebaini at this point for left back,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if you think back to Dortmund under their heyday of Klopp, I mean, they had Piszczek and Großkreuz. I mean, let's be honest, those were very workman-like fullbacks, but they did an amazing job. They did benefit from the people ahead of them. And so, sorry, not Großkreuz, Schmelzer. But, these were not top-tier fullbacks. But they did the job they needed to do. And what Dortmund really need are fullbacks who are solid defensively, because if you have players like Adeyemi and Brandt and Mann and Aller doing what they do ahead of you, you don't need that much coming from the fullback position. What you need is the occasional overlaps, underlaps, good crosses, nice passes, which I think Dortmund are set on the right side. I think, with Wolf and Riasson, you've got your fullback rotation for the right-hand side. And the nice thing is they both could play on the left-hand side. It's just that left-hand side is what really needs to be taken care of. And I agree with you. Bensebaini is one of those. He's a solid pro. If Dortmund get him for free and just pays salary, and then I'd be okay with it. Just not another Nico Schulz type situation. And he's obviously better than Nico Schulz. So in that case, I can't necessarily argue with getting him or against it. So we'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
It's funny that you bring up Nico Schulz, because I'm not entirely sure he is better than Nico Schulz, in the sense that the Hoffenheim Nico Schulz was, I think, better arguably than the Gladbach Bensebaini. However, the Dortmund Nico Schulz, maybe also due to whatever is going on in his private life, has completely fallen off a cliff and is a much worse player. And also, of course, factoring into that is that the Hoffenheim Nico Schulz also played in an entirely different system than he ever played in Dortmund. So that maybe hit his weaknesses. But I digress. So the point you make that players become better if they have better service around them does not apply to every player that we have signed. So I just wanted to put this little warning on there that this isn't necessarily 100% a given.
No, that's true. But I mean, this Dortmund side is also better than any Dortmund side has been in a few seasons. Even if Bellingham leaves, obviously that'll be a drop in quality. But if you re-sign Guerrero and you maybe plug him into that number 8 spot.
Well, about the Guerrero, there the
we'll
moving
see.
boxes are out. I don't know if you read it.
I mean, who knows?
So.
Who knows? I mean, I would have rather Dortmund would have gotten someone like Grimaldo, who unfortunately is obviously not coming. He's going to Leverkusen. I think that would have been a better option, but we'll see. We'll see. But for right now, the focus is purely on the next 90 minutes of football on the pitch.
That is true. But I am excited to talk off-season with you and the transfers, because when we talk about Nico Schulz and Dahoud and whatnot, a lot of wage is going to be freed up. If, say, maybe even Hummels retires, so Marco Reus, I think, just took a pay cut. So there's a lot of room to operate for Sebastian Kehl. So I'm really intrigued to see how we're gonna fill these gaps if Bellingham leaves. But there's just so many question marks still. I don't even know if it makes sense to really talk about it now, even though it is kind of interesting. But as you said, Augsburg and Mainz are, to me, far more interesting than whatever happens in the offseason. Because should we not win the championship, there's still plenty of this to talk about. But in the meantime, Matthias, as always, thank you for joining. I'm a little sad that you didn't hear the Ja Schmelle soundboard clip I played, because you do not hear the soundboard, because otherwise I would have to wire way more cables, and I don't have a nice roadcaster. So unfortunately, this is how it's right now. But nevertheless, again, thanks for lending your expertise and chatting
Always
Borussia
a
Dortmund
joy.
with me.
Always a joy.
Yeah, in good and bad times, I would say. It's always fun to do this podcast. So everyone out there, as always, thank you for listening, and have a great weekend. Until next time, goodbye.